Okay. Let's call to order the meeting of the Edina City Council. It's their work session, our work session, this Tuesday, April 16, 2024. It is 5:33 p.m. And I'm going to ask our clerk, Sharon Allison, to call the roll.
Councilmember Agnew. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Here. Councilmember Pierce is absent. Councilmember Rissler. Here. Mayor Hubble.
Here. We got two things we're going to talk about in the work session tonight. And we're going to reverse the order. One's the Roslyn Park pedestrian bridge project. We're going to get an update there from our city engineer, and I can help a little bit on that as well. And then we're going to get a legislative update from Katie Sen, who has been really busy over there, along with a lot of us from the MLC cities. We worked on various pieces of legislation, so it's good to have you here. And you've been doing some great work for us. So
thank you.
we're having some real success again this year. Thank you for that good work.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So I'm going to focus really on the Edina bills that we've been working on proactively, but I know there's a lot of legislation moving related to cities, and I know, Mayor, you and your staff have been involved in shaping them and improving them, and so if there's other, non-Edina bills that you want to talk about, I'm happy to do that. Some I'm, maybe more involved in the weeds than others, but happy to get back to you about more information too. But mostly wanted to focus on the things we've been proactively working on. So, the first one that looks like it's on its way to be signed is the Capital Investment Corrections Bill. And we had a provision in there related to the fire station. Last year, they gave us money for design and pre-design. And there was enough money in the pot that they gave us to use some of that for construction. So we had them add in an allowable use is construction, so that we can make sure and use the full amount that we got from the legislature. So that bill actually passed, it already passed the House, it passed the Senate last night, identical language. So there won't be a conference committee, and that'll go to the governor for signature and hopefully be signed in the next week. So that was a good early success. I would call mid-April early at the legislature for something to pass, especially a bonding bill that needed a supermajority. So I think the fact that sailed through and wasn't controversial, even though it needed bipartisan support, was a good sign. The other bill that I think is in a good position that we've been working on, and Bill Neuendorf's been working on that a lot too, is the TIF bill. It's one bill that actually has, it relates to two different projects, one at 70th and one at 72nd in France, and it's getting some extensions. And the bill was not requesting anything out of the ordinary, I would say, as far as special TIF legislation goes. Often when there's some macroeconomic change like higher interest rates, cities do come because projects don't come together the same way they were anticipated necessarily before that macroeconomic change happened. So I think in that sense, it makes legislators understand that. And so that provision is included in the House Property Tax Division report, which came out over the weekend. And that typically just gets rolled into the omnibus tax bill. So on the House side, we're anticipating, we're in the House side, and it's the exact language we introduced, which is good because sometimes they can give you an extension, but not as many years as you wanted. And so far, it's exactly what we asked for. The Senate has a little bit different process. They don't have a property tax division, so they just released their omnibus tax bill, which they have not done yet. But we have our hearing tomorrow on that bill in Senate taxes. And so we're hoping that will also be included on the Senate side. And so Senator Mann is our Senate author, and Representative Joachim was our House author, which is really great because she was property tax chair and can really get into the weeds on TIF and how that impacts the city and the school and all of that stuff, which is really helpful as to have an author with kind of really that in-depth knowledge.
And Bill's planning to testify.
Bill will be there tomorrow testifying, and he testified in the House as well. So we've signed him up and we've sent over our handouts. And then on
Is there testimony required tomorrow?
Yeah, Bill will testify. So, yeah, he'll present with Senator Mann. So she'll kind of introduce the bill, and then Bill will walk through the mechanics of why it's needed and what the bill does and help answer questions, which is what he did in the House, too. And we met with Senator Mann maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago, just to kind of report out on the House process. She has not been on tax committee before, so just to kind of walk her through, she's a doctor, as you all know, so a different background than like a city council member where you deal with TIF all the time. So that was, she made time for us to come and kind of walk through that with her. Then on the bonding bill side, so we have, our top priority is getting the funding for the Vernon Avenue Bridge project. And I've been in close contact with Chad and Scott and Ari and everyone on that project. I think, the bonding bill, neither the House or Senate has released bonding bills yet. I think that's a top priority to pass one. Right now, there's lots of rumors and rumblings about what it's going to look like, what percentage of it will be local projects versus state agency, and then how much each caucus kind of will get to decide to spend. And so I think the overarching thing we've heard from the beginning is manage expectations. Like, everyone's not going to get everything they want, but we've been pushing hard to get, our request is 5.3 million. And we had some conversations last week with Senator Mann, Senator Latz, Representative Joachim, to talk to the chairs about why that 5.3 is needed, and that it's to buy a MnDOT bridge, essentially. And it's for a project that is gonna need to happen one way or another. And so I think, and obviously we were on the tour, and I think we've had really good responses just from the merits of the project. I think the things that could happen are it could get trimmed back and we could get something less than 5.3. I think because part of it is that they're pushing back on cities to put in more of their own money, not just Edina, but other cities, to make the small amount of local funding go farther. So for example, the governor's bonding bill had $40 million statewide for all local projects.
Oh, wow.
And so that's a pretty small number. I think that the legislative, the bill that comes out will be bigger than that, but even if it's double, that's 80. And so they are going to be looking to figure out, how do we make the dollars stretch as far as possible. So that one we'll keep talking to them. And I think we've made a good case that even if they give us less than 5.3, that's still really helpful because it has to get done one way or another. And it is a state bridge. And so it makes sense for them to kick in, as close to that as possible. So that's one where I would say the conversations are still really ongoing with us, communicating and trying to understand where they're at.
Remind me, these are GO bonds, not transportation bonds, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And then the other bill that I would say is dependent on budget targets and, how much they decide to spend is our sales tax exemption bill. So we had a bill that is asking for a sales tax exemption on construction materials for the projects that were funded with the sales tax. And so Braemar Park is included in that, and then Fred Richards Park, so it would be an exemption for materials. There's no real policy debate about whether those should be exempt. I think legislators all agree it's kind of silly that you have to pay tax on those materials. The problem is that it's expensive to do an exemption, and so it's never, a global statewide exemption has never passed. It's gotten close, but hasn't quite passed. Including last year with a $19 million surplus. So in past years, when they've had enough revenue, they have done they've done a lot of those. This year, the tax committee, I think, has about a $40 million target, and there are a lot of these requests for the sales tax exemptions. And so I think House and Senate have talked about looking at it slightly differently. The Senate has talked about potentially doing all of them, but doing a percentage of the sales tax exemption to save money. The House has only heard like maybe 2 of them. And the ones they've heard, they consider like emergency situations, like if you have PFAS in your water and you're building a new water treatment plant, or if there was a fire and something burned down and you're rebuilding it, and we don't fit into that category. So our bill was heard in the Senate, and I think again, like this fits the bill from a policy standpoint of what legislators would want to do. It's just that they all have a state cost. And so they're going to be, looking at how to prioritize them. And honestly, because ours is paid for with the sales tax, which some legislators were supportive of and others were not, might be a little more of an uphill battle competing against some of like the water treatment plants. So that one, we'll see. It'd be great if they take the Senate approach to just do a percentage of all of them. I think there's a lot of, I mean, because there's a lot of legislators that have these, that are pushing for them. So that's a politically, there's political upside to that solution where members can get a piece of what they were really pushing for. So those are the bills that we're working on. We did introduce the aquatic park bill. That one, just given the tight amount of bonding, we pretty much heard right away, like, just focus on your top priority, because I don't think many cities, if any, are gonna get more than one project. But it was good to get that introduced, I think, just to kind of be able to have the conversation, for legislators to know it's out there. Sometimes there is a little bit of get in line mentality for the next bonding cycle. If it's something that's already been introduced, it's already in the queue, it's seen as, more higher on the list. So I'll just pause there, see if there's, questions, or I don't know, Scott or Chad, if you want to add anything. You've been involved in some of these conversations with legislators too.
Questions for Katie, or comments, or what about our strange bedfellows bill with the on the liquor?
Oh, yeah. That one, it's so far, it's still alive, it's still moving. There was an amendment to try to take it out on the floor, and Senator Latz, spoke against the amendment and in favor of keeping it in. So I'm still keeping an eye on that one, but I think it looks like that could move forward. And that would allow you to transfer, and I'm not an expert on liquor law, but it would allow you to transfer wine from one facility to another. Yeah. I mean, the other things that I know city groups are working hard on is a lot of the housing issues, which probably a lot of you are tracking, but that sort of missing middle bill seems to be dead. Nothing's ever really dead, but it seems like that is as close to dead as you can get, with the speaker kind of acknowledging that. The bill allowing, multifamily development on commercially zoned areas is still going forward. I think the league has made a lot of headway in improving it and changing it. They still oppose the bill as it currently stands. It was heard today in Senate State Gov. House and Senate bills are not identical. I think the House language is a little bit better. But that is one that I know the league is working really closely on. There's a bill that's moving related to bonding that would say if a city gets state funding for a project, then you're required to have a replacement fund to kind of keep that upkeep for the facility, because there's frustration that cities are coming back, and counties, for a project that was state funded, and then they also want the rehab for it. And that's one that both the county and city groups have, I think, weighed in and expressed some concerns about. And then another one that I know, Scott, you might be able to describe the issue better than I can, but it's about group residential licensing. And that one is moving, like that is in the House and the Senate Human Services bill. And that, my understanding of that bill is that it would change, like if you wouldn't be able to essentially license those facilities anymore. And I think the debate about the bill and what the bill does haven't necessarily matched up really well, and that's why it's moved forward. But I know the league is also working on that, and some cities that have licensing have expressed concerns. But
can we go back to the multifamily and the commercial? Because I am really concerned about that. Because it does have the potential to totally wipe out little neighborhood nodes. And we have already flipped 3 parcels that are zoned commercial to purely residential projects. And I'm just thinking about the node near me. There's one, strip mall that's been there. It's kind of like going back in time. It's really kind of cool. But all it would take is for a developer to purchase that and turn it into purely residential, and our node is gone, essentially. And is there any kind of language in the bill that looks at, that would limit that to a certain percentage of a business node, or could you, because I mean, some of these places where there's commercial land, there's not a lot of commercial land, but it's really important for walkability and sustainability.
yeah, I'm not sure about a percentage. There was an amendment that allows the first floor to be commercial now, so it's not all, unless you're doing like really deeply affordable housing. And then the other concession was they were gonna say you couldn't have any parking requirements. And I think that's been changed. I will say, you never know what they have the votes to pass or not. The Senate obviously is one vote majority. They did take this provision out of the omnibus housing bill, which sometimes is a sign that they are having trouble getting the votes to pass something and they don't want it to tank a whole omnibus bill. So that provision is moving on its own in its own bill. It's not in the omnibus housing bill that just came out this week. So that's a good sign. But I do think the cities they still don't like the bill and have expressed a lot of concerns. And Mayor, I know you've been involved in a lot of those housing discussions, so I don't know if you have any more insight into where they might land, but.
You still can't get 4010 looking the way we want it to look.
Yeah.
Which is the multifamily housing and commercial industrial.
It's one element of it, right?
Is that the House file number?
For some of the cities like Park Lake, they've only got like 5% of their town is commercial industrial, and they don't want to lose it.
Right.
But they're saying on the other hand, we got 1,000 acres comp planned and zoned for multifamily. Why do we have to allow it in commercial industrial districts when we've got green space we can put it in?
Right, and then fully developed suburbs like ours, I mean, it's a different problem. You've got limited.
One of the challenges is that the author from Duluth sees in Duluth commercial industrial that's just basically blighted and abandoned.
Oh, they've got a lot. I mean, we walked around Duluth and it was just, there's so much opportunity.
Yeah, that's what she sees. She thinks every city is like Duluth, that there's no opportunity there. At least that was my read from meeting with her, is that was her frame of reference, and we were telling her, well, no, we don't have those kinds of situations here. We've got vital commercial industrial neighborhoods that we want to keep commercial industrial for the most part and be selective about what we do if we do put housing in there. And then we also pointed out that under fiscal disparities, the money that goes in the fiscal disparities pool comes off of the commercial industrial tax base. So to the extent we change the housing, we get that. It doesn't go to the pool anymore.
Right.
And that didn't seem to resonate that well, although St. Paul should have been in there fighting on that one because they have the biggest recipient of fiscal disparities monies.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think, legislators do listen to their city councils and mayors, and I think that has, things that looked like they were zooming through at the beginning of session have slowed down at least. Some are gone, like the missing middle bill is done. And this one, I think there is pressure for them to keep compromising, but there's also a lot of pressure from the affordable housing folks that are saying, this is gonna be a silver bullet. But I do think, I think the testifiers have done a good job raising some real specific examples, like what you were just talking about. And so it's one that's gonna come down. I mean, I don't know what will happen with it, if it will pass or not.
Our sense was that Jeannie Cleaborn, who's the chair of the House Local Government Committee, was our real ally on the missing middle bill, which was really dangerous. Helped us, I think, kill that one off more so than she probably talks about. But now she's hearing then. But she kept telling us when we go to meet with her, you got to help me on 4010, which is the multifamily. I got to come up with something here.
Yeah.
So we gave her quite a few ideas on what to do, and she's kind of holding those ideas back.
Okay.
Until she gets past, what is it, the Friday,
This Friday is the finance deadline, so bills that have a cost, if they could still move forward, but they have to go through rules, it gets harder. So yeah, this is the last week for finance bills, and they have to be to Ways and Means.
And our backstop is her and Patty Acom and Heather Edelson.
Okay.
Those three will go to bat for cities if they have to, and try to stop it. And then we only need one on the Senate side.
Okay.
To stop it.
One of our early priorities this session was we were going to ask if could be some support to change the lodging tax bill so that we could have more flexibility around how those dollars were spent. And our initial meetings with our legislative team didn't go very well. They advised us that they weren't interested in doing that, and that was going to be a pretty difficult row to hoe. So nothing has happened with those particular items.
There is also, there was a local option sales task force that was meeting, and they've been going through their recommendations, and there's a House bill and a Senate bill that so far, do not impact sales taxes that already passed. But that's one we're watching because it would create equalization for new ones that pass. So if you pass the sales tax, you have to contribute a portion of it to a pot. I think for ones that already passed, it doesn't work because you've already based your calculations on what, you already had a referendum and people voted on certain projects. So I don't know really how they would do that retroactively, but that's something I guess I'm just kind of keeping an eye on to make sure.
Is that on the House side or the?
It's on both. So there was a task force, and then the House and Senate tax tiers each have bills that are different. On the one hand, the bills would allow cities to impose sales taxes without legislative approval for a certain number of types of projects.
Yeah, how do they go about I noticed that in the rest bill in the Senate that if it has regional significance, you don't have to go back to the legislature and get their approval. But how do they define that? Do you remember?
I think there's a list of certain types of projects, like a convention center over a certain size. They list them out. Like I said, the House and Senate are different, so I assume they will put those in their omnibus bills, and then that will probably get worked out in conference committee. So that will, that probably will open the door for cities that don't have them yet.
And I think it also, didn't it provide, it's a 1% cap. And so
Right.
it provided the opportunity for cities that only have the half cent to gain the additional half cent if you wanted to go, if you had a project that qualified and if you passed it through the referendum process that we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't think the goal is wouldn't impact us at this point, but I'm always a little paranoid about, especially with if they do try to do like a revenue sharing. So that's just one we're watching. So.
Under 4009 now, that's down to 8, that's the missing middle bill, that's down to ADUs only. So what we suggested there was that you let cities figure out what their ADU ordinance ought to look like, thinking about the stage we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And then just tell cities they have to do it by a date certain. By the end of 2025, you have to have an ADU ordinance. Or by the end of 2025, you have to have an ordinance that allows multifamily housing in a commercial industrial district with whatever sort of parameters you put around that. It's a city. So let the cities figure out their land use on their own. And if you don't do it by the end of 2025, come up with your ideas on those two categories, and maybe you be subject to a clawback on your sales tax money that's coming into your city for affordable housing, or part of it be clawed back, and then that will go into a common pool to use for affordable housing in the region, in the metro region.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound like good compromises.
Mm-hmm.
But we need a better way of defining just success for affordable housing and adding density, because if you look at the census figures, our population is lower than it was in 2018, and we've been adding all of these housing. We're adding density of residential units, but we're not increasing the density of people living in Edina. And I think that's a real issue that needs to be talked about. It's almost like we're designing for people to live alone, which is a thing, but.
On a broad basis, what I see is they don't believe that over at the legislature. They think we have a shortage of housing, affordable or not.
Right.
And we're short 100,000 units, and so they're bound and determined to push on cities to produce the product that they want to see. The production is way under what they believe it should be. And I think a lot of us think the way you do it. We're not so sure that those are the right numbers.
No, and houses like modest houses that could house a family are disappearing and being replaced by more expensive houses that house one person. It doesn't make
There's
sense.
also, I feel like just a disconnect between like how much zoning changes boost, deeply affordable housing. Like I think
Yeah.
I think some of the zoning changes wouldn't actually do what they're hoping they will do.
No.
Well, former city council member Lisa McDonald from Minneapolis had a great article a few weeks ago in the Star Tribune on that very topic of zoning has little to nothing to do with production of affordable housing. It's all about land, labor, lumber.
David Schultz has written about it too. And the Minneapolis plan and how he didn't see that working out.
Anything else that you hear about or?
Yeah, feel free to reach out if it's helpful for me when I hear, oh, there's this bill, especially because a lot of your staff are probably in like different groups that are following like the engineers follow certain things. So feel free to pass any of that along. That's helpful to me.
You know what helped me, I never expected it, was I had that contact with Jenny Cleavorn by being on that Met Council Governance Task Force with her.
Oh, wow.
So you developed a relationship with her, and we had the same view of the world on the Met Council. It really helped when it came to this, because then she would,
Oh, yeah. This is very
she would
helpful.
call you or write to
Yeah,
you.
continue to be her go-to person on city stuff. That's really helpful for sure. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
Katie.
Yeah, talk to you after session.
Yeah, power us through it all.
Thank you.
5 weeks ago or so, huh?
Yeah, not that anyone's counting.
And no special session.
I don't think there'll be a special session. That famous last word.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
See ya.
bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Katie.
Well, the next topic, Roslyn Park Bed Bridge. We'll give you an update. We were in front of you about a month ago. Not a lot to update, but definitely want some feedback from this group on steps and how to move forward. And so just recall, we kind of landed on something like this. We heard function, does what it does from a function standpoint. We need more work on the form. So we need to bring in maybe some architectural help, and we've been on some phone calls here the last couple weeks. So these are the people we've met with recently and some pretty famous bridges. So on those dates, we met with SOM Architects, and I'll show the bridges these folks have done, just to give you an idea. But Benton Johnson's a U of M grad and went down to the U of M, and he was presenting on ped bridges that Friday. It was just a random ping, and he happened to be in town from Chicago. We met with the city of Calgary. Peter Phillips, he works for Calgary now for about 2 years, but prior to that, he designed ped bridges for 20 years. So just a random, again, conversation. We didn't know that was his background. We wanted to talk about the Peace Bridge in Calgary. I talked to Trace Zox, with BKV, who's designed the fire station. He's done ped bridges and has received well from council. Next Architects out of Amsterdam, we met with on Monday, and then Snow Krellick, I also talked to yesterday, and they do ped bridges, and we know that name from other stuff within the city. So I'll just kind of run through what they've done. So this is SOM Architects. They did the PP pedestrian bridge in Millennium Park in Chicago. So, this crosses a roadway, but it meanders and it has these big metal panels and looks like wood plank walkways. And this was done by SOM Architects out of Chicago, but they have international offices, and met Benton in person. It was a nice conversation. City of Calgary, the Peace Bridge came up, and this is the Peace Bridge. Looks like a Chinese finger trap. It's got those things. We learned some things from Peter Phillips. The bridge was built in 2012 before he was there for $25 million. He estimates this would be double that cost today, if not more. And they're seeing some operational things. They used to have glass railings here, and people would come by with hammers and break the glass railings, he said.
Throw beer bottles through
Throw beer bottles through it. So they did a $2 million fix of the railings, and now they're dealing with the glass on top, the graffiti and different things. So he had some really good comments about be careful of the materials you use when you think about something that's open to the public from that standpoint. But much larger bridge again than what we're looking at, but just an idea.
He said it's quite a draw, but it's really expensive to maintain.
Really expensive, yeah. And then BKV, we had the fire station in the upper left that you guys have approved recently, and it's getting ready to start construction. And then some other concepts of, some ped bridges they've started doing design, and one down by St. Anthony, Maine area, the mill area that they've developed. So this could be a firm we look at with BKV. Next Architects out of Amsterdam, they put a lot of work in the responding. They took our report and actually put together a 50-page PDF that I can show you some of the stuff if you're interested. But this one, I won't even.
Ask somebody to send it to all the council members.
That would be cool to see that.
Oh, I can send it off. We can get that out. Yep.
Yeah, it's great. They just did this unsolicited, put a
And I have it.
50-page PowerPoint together.
Wow. Maybe they had it ready.
Yeah.
They send it to everyone.
Yeah, no, you'll see that they
Specific.
did not send, they do not have it ready.
And I have it open. We can look at it too if you
Yeah.
want. But this is called, I don't know how to pronounce
The
it, Milky Way Bridge, because this was the milk route before the canal was there. Right up Main Street is on to the left, straight up. So they did this walkway with stairs over the top because this thing folds open. It expands for the canal when boats come through, so kind of an interesting bridge, but they don't have the elevation that they need to go up and down, so this is ADA compliant. You can see how flat it is. But it actually closes, opens up and allows passage through the waterway there. And this is some from their concepts. They actually started laying out some bridge ideas to kind of mimic that bridge here on our own site. And I can show you that a little bit more in detail, but then these are some other bridges that they've done. This one's on top of the roof of a school. It goes on the roof of the school back here and then comes around, and some of this is heated to melt the snow in the winter. This one again is another one that they're about ready to build. I think that was in Belgium. I think they mentioned kind of a wood structure. And then Snow Kralik, they did the treetop trail that just opened at the Minnesota Zoo. They were the architect on that, and that's a picture of it on the right. And then they've done a lot of pedestrian ways and walkways around various stadiums. And I think this was from St. Louis Soccer Stadium, St. Louis, Missouri. They did the St. Paul State Stadium, of course, in St. Paul. Maybe I'll show that other file here quick from those architects.
They can run through that. Here's their presentation they sent us
Yeah, they took
from
some,
Amsterdam.
a little intro here using our report. And they talked about different values and bridge designs and how they would approach something like this. They took our project goals right from our report, some of the graphics we had, and then start to identify those, what's the issues here? How do we build a bridge with all these various things, right? Direct access, future sound barrier, existing paths, trees, stuff like that. And then they started throwing in some concepts of, this is the current situation, we took it away, what can we do? The original idea for their bridge wouldn't fit here. It doesn't have enough ramp length. It wouldn't get over the highway from an ADA standpoint. So they started trying to fit it into those constraints that we talked about with that. Then some other options more impactful to the park on the south, right? And that's where we had discussions with the Parks Department. They're concerned about the amount of impacts there, but
See where they tried to avoid trees? They
Yep.
went around the trees there.
just some different alignments and where do we actually want it to touch down.
That's a big frisbee golf area right
Well, there's frisbee golf, and
That's
then
Yeah.
we want the bikes to connect to the frontage road versus the path
Yeah.
around the lake. So I think that's something, they're not aware, they just took a shot at some ideas here, right? So it's
Well,
good.
they're the home of bicycle riders. They know
They're the,
bikes.
yeah, they do. And then they looked at a little wider and then shifting it again that we didn't, we talked about this, but kind of took it off as an option because of the speeds of bikes and water impacts and constructability when you moved it way down that way.
Also, shifting it that dramatically, I think, is not something that would be viewed favorably, just because we've already had so much dialogue.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
I don't-
okay.
If we went
Say
back
that
to something
again,
like this, we'd have to get some other feedback.
Say that again?
Shifting it that dramatically moves away
Residents
from,
Oh,
didn't want it.
I mean, we've made a decision.
well, fundamentally, I'd say I agree with you, but I think depending upon the shape and what it looks like, somebody might change their mind when they see something that's coupling both form with function.
Yep. And then they just talked about some of the work they've done. This was an interesting one that there's a path just on the other side of these blocks that when it floods, this is a way for people to still access this little island. So it kind of speaks to climate change, right? You're going to do a proclamation on Earth Day later this evening. So that was an interesting concept there. I look at this and say, how can they safely let people do this? It's quite a step across, but
It's good 3 feet.
yeah, it's quite a step there, but, and there's this one that they're gonna build this year in Belgium. I thought it was an interesting design with the connection point and these kind of wood, it's a timber structure. This was a big cable structure here and they integrated,
Yeah, stop there for a second. You see this is one of those cabling bridges? We talked to the guy in Calgary, you said, well, you can do things in different price categories. So he said, you got like the basic railroad trestle bridge. For a couple million more, you can do this. For double the money, you can do this, the cabling. So, you know, we're constrained a bit by the budget at 6 million, but maybe we can stretch a little bit if people were interested on the council in doing that. We can talk about what the guy from Calgary had to say that's been designing pedestrian bridges for 20 years.
Yep. And then just some other bridges they've done. They laid out a whole bunch of other stuff that they've done,
Yeah, we've done some unbelievable
you know,
stuff.
so they've done some really cool stuff. There's a better view of that, the milk route, right up over the stairs and right down Main Street. So it was pretty interesting. And this actually creates a really good view of the whole downtown area. It's as tall as the rest of the buildings there, so.
Otherwise, that city's pretty flat.
Yeah, it was really, but it's steep. When you see this picture, you realize how steep it is. So I would be concerned there, but look at those kids on the outside of the railing. I just see them in the wintertime skidding down that thing, but, this is the one that went on top of the school building. This is on the roof of the school and it created spaces for more of a area you want to confine the kids and more of an open play area outside of the thing, so. Like the mayor said, they do bikes, trails all over. They're the leaders, right? Then they got some more out in the country, rural areas, trying to connect various things. There's that,
There's that bridge. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
yeah. There's a walking path,
When the tidal water backs
Yep.
up, they step across on those blocks.
yeah.
That's in Rotterdam. With a lookout.
Yeah. And then they shared crossing 1, 2 spots here with an underpass here, so just various different, you know, they shared that they've done big transportation bridges, but not what we need right now. And this one, I really like this one, but
One of them was designed in a way where it could be home to bats.
that was, yeah, was it, I think it was this one.
I think it was that one.
I think it was this one, they said it had some
Designed to accommodate a bunch of
ecological,
bats that,
yep.
like Austin, you know, has that bridge where all the bats
Mm-hmm.
hang out.
Again, just this featured bridge they brought up quite a bit. A little bit more of the scale of that cable bridge, much bigger than what we're looking at here.
Cable bridge is quite beautiful.
And some hand sketches here. So yeah, they put together a lot of, that's the packet of information they put together.
Just out of nowhere, this thing comes.
And then-
Some pages.
And then Trace sent me some stuff too, you know, I asked, hey, put together some stuff, and they've done some almost bridges, skyways a little bit more. So when I went to listen to Benton Johnson, he talked mostly on skyways. He had one ped bridge, but mostly skyways. So again, you know, they've done some things here where it's still a bridge, it's how do you face the bridge? How do you treat the outside? Just some ideas here that BKV has done. And this is connecting to this is Killebrew pedestrian bridge down Mall of America. So this is in Bloomington that I think has been built, I think. And then some of that other bridge concepts here, kind of hard to see, but kind of that kind of stuff. So lots of different opportunities that BKV has done also. And then some of the transit, they just want to show some of the transit work they've done. So that's,
So would you mind going back to the one from Rotterdam that had the wood?
oh, okay.
Oh, the wood,
like the
that
very
layered
first
wood underneath.
Yeah, well, there are two. There's
That
this
one?
one like that, and then there was the other one that had the siding to it.
Oh, the steel siding?
The one with the bats, right?
Yeah, the one with the bat.
This one.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool in that, you know, I think the on-ramp, or not the on-ramp, but yeah, the ramping is where the big concern that you raised was.
On the neighborhood side.
Yeah, it just was so,
Yep.
you know, concrete-y, for lack of a better
This gets
term.
rid of all that bulk, you know, it looks
Yeah.
like the one we have designed looks to me like a railway trestle with two big concrete legs on each side
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are kind of awkward looking.
yeah. So could something like this work for our ramps? I mean,
Well, again, we didn't do any aesthetic work on we just put together
Right,
what our
right,
standard
right.
thing is, and
but this is so cool.
we're
This,
looking
this
for
looks,
ideas from the council. Next steps, I got one more slide I wanted to just
Okay,
talk
sure,
to you about, and then,
Did you find any of those Varendeel art systems?
well, he talked about, Varendeel means straight, up and down, steel members, but then you also open it up. So you make it more inviting, not such a tunnel feel. You
Yeah.
open it up, both vertical members instead of angled members, but then also you could move it this way.
The guy from, Peter Phillips, the guy from Calgary said, here's a few ideas for spanning 200 feet. He said, move from prefabricated trusses to a Varendeel arch system,
Yep.
which angles out 30 degrees, and you get rid of all the diagonals, and you have this Varendeel arch, and it costs a little bit more, but it gives people the sense that they have more space and don't feel closed in when they're going across the bridge. And then he talked about a railing system. He knows MnDOT requires an 8-foot
Yep.
fence, but he said you can do it in a way where you use a grab rail below and the fencing up above, and it kind of cuts into it. And then he said add curvature for bikes so they can stay on their bikes. They go really slow and then down to about 10 miles an hour. He had all that calculated by,
oh, wow.
how you do it to get that 5% grade, but include the curvature. And then he also talked about coating systems using a prefabricated truss and galvanized product to keep it durable. But don't enclose them, he said, don't enclose them.
Don't paint them, because you'll always be dealing with paint.
Yeah.
Like on the outside of this building with that weathering steel, then you don't ever have to paint it, so.
He said if it's got an artful shape to it, keep the art in the bridge itself. Don't have it hanging off the bridge,
Okay,
And then, so that, if we use that Varendeel arch and some of the other ideas he had, it would increase the budget, he thought, by 1 or 2 million. But if we go to a cable bridge, that'll double the budget. He said you probably can get a really pretty nice bridge for 10, 12 million. And he also suggested, I guess Chad suggested this to him and asked him for feedback, was about a design competition.
oh, yeah,
So you ask for requests for proposals from people. And he said,
Great
if you
idea.
do that, make sure that the teams have both an architect and a structural engineer as part of the team. Otherwise, you can't really properly evaluate the cost of it. And we got a structural engineer that is
Yep.
good, has been on the
And he's
calls.
willing
I've
to
been
team
on.
with whoever, so it's really
Yeah.
trying to find that right architect. So I actually called City of Sacramento, did a competition for a bridge. Their scale, it was called the I Street Bridge, and I talked to him today. The guy was super excited about talking, but they're doing a $250 million project there, so a little different scale. But what they did is they did a request for qualifications, had a engineering firm on board, started the architecture, the media got wind, and they were not doing as much as they should have, just kind of like this conversation. So then they did a request for information with 4 architects, paid them 25 grand each to put in a proposal, and then voted and did all the committees and picked one to work with the structural engineer that they already had hired. So we typically wouldn't do stipends for people, but we could go out and ask for sketch plans. Give us some ideas of a sketch plan, and however the council says, is it council deciding, or is it the public deciding, or a combination of both? Then we hire an architect and bring them on board and work with Bolton and Mink and design this thing. So, we're looking at that. That's the kind of feedback I'm looking at. The other thing to bring up, the mayor, you brought up, we have $6 million. That's the budget we have available. That's what I've been planning to, so we could see what the architects could come up for that number. Because if they go away from some of those big concrete things, there might be ways to save money. But some of these other ideas are definitely gonna raise the budget, so I think that's a discussion we'd have to have if I don't know what the other funding would be at this point, if we went above that number, but we do have some strings and deadlines on these numbers, on the
I was
funding.
on 2 of the calls with Amsterdam and Calgary. I don't think Calgary's interested in being involved, other than giving us advice. But I think both Amsterdam and SOM from Chicago might be interested in submitting something to us.
SOM for sure, Snow Crowley would be, BKV, and then next, I don't know if the scale of this, they would want to participate from such a distance
But they
away.
did, I thought they had.
I had the sense that they would love
They
to have
teamed,
a.
they teamed with I got this, they were number 2 in Sacramento in
Ah,
the
yeah,
And they were
competition.
number 2 in New York.
In New York too, and they teamed with Stantec. That's how
Ah,
they got here. They
okay.
teamed with an engineer.
My sense was they'd like to have something they could talk about in the United States.
I think so too, but I'm just, the scale of this might, but
Might not be worth it.
we can ask them and they can respond if they want.
Yeah, they can respond.
So that's kind of the way I was, since we have 3-4 different architects, ask for requests for information, get some sketch plans and have a pre-sketch plan meeting kind of and share the values and share the report and what we're after. So that was somebody, the Sacramento guy said, make sure you're all on the same page on what the expectations are and those constraints, next architects laid out those constraints.
I actually think the guy in Calgary that spent 20 years designing Fed bridges a consult for us for nothing because he works for the city. And I think he probably look at things that, we got in on a request for proposal basis and give us a little guidance.
Yeah.
So we're in kind of a good spot. How do you all feel about offering kind of a base statement? I hadn't thought about that.
It's
for
pretty,
architects.
it's getting more common in
Yeah.
project world like that.
It's like a proposal, it takes work for them to put it together, but.
Well, if it was 25,000 for a $250 million project, that's what, 1/100th of a percent?
Yeah,
or something?
their
So-
scale is way different, right? Anything we spend.
$600?
I think I would want to know what's reasonable.
Yeah.
Like, 25,000 wouldn't be.
No, that seems way too
So-
high. I feel like if we can somehow communicate that this is simple hand sketches and not have them put 50 hours into it, give us 10 hours, just like you do for a proposal. They easily put in a lot of hours on proposals if we were gonna go out that way.
Did Sacramento define the number of entities they wanted
Yes,
to apply?
they just,
I mean, you could say, well, we're only gonna give you $2,500 or $5,000, and then you could have 50 companies apply.
no, they defined who they went out to, so I think we got a great list already. I don't wanna open it up.
We got a list of 4,
Yeah, yep,
2 local.
1 in Chicago and 1 potentially in Amsterdam.
So did you say that Trace was on there?
Mhm.
Okay.
You're not doing any of the dramatic bridges, like the clear base bridges that, there's that one that it seems like it's gonna crack when people walk across it, just to freak them out.
The Sundial Bridge, here's one I just saw, this was the Sundial Bridge in Redding, California. The guy from Sacramento told me about this one. He said, don't do these
Yeah,
type of floors.
no, but I mean, it's fascinating to see just, not that I think it would be a good idea, but.
See this floor, they have super issues with this floor.
Yeah,
It's slippery. Where'd it go?
no, but they're designed to be scary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, this.
Yeah, oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that
You
looks,
can't maintain it, he said, it's a nightmare. He said the all white attracts bugs, the mosquitoes just go on this thing.
Yeah.
But it's a big sail when you see a picture of it, it's a big cable stay thing, it almost looks like a sail, but again,
The Irene Hickson Bridge across the freeway that connects Loring Park to the Walker's
Oh, yeah.
Culture Garden is also really neat. And that's got a poem that goes across that you can read as you're walking, which is kind of cool. But, I mean, I don't know, I really think your point about materials and really being careful about that is so critical. And, if we could just kind of pare it down a little bit so that it's, I can't remember who said we're being reasonable with what we're thinking about.
I don't think we need to go to a cable bridge to get a nice bridge.
No,
no, this one isn't, this is a steel fabricated, two colors.
that's Sia Armadani.
Yep.
And then it goes down and there's like a little reading room that he designed in the same style in Loring Park, which is kind of cool, so it couples with that.
I love the idea of asking for
Have a
some
sketch
sketch
plan
plans,
idea
yeah.
and
Yeah.
should we take that out to the community then to vote? Is it council votes on it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we just do it at the council level. We
Yeah,
get the 4
because otherwise we'll have
get
to
the
hear
4
about elevators
proposals. I think
again.
It's easier for residents to look at something and react to it than, let us kind of guide it at the beginning.
Okay.
And we'd like a little feedback based on what Kate said about what would be an appropriate level of stipend
Yeah.
to just give us something better than sketch plan. But, I mean, we don't want the back of an envelope for $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000.
Yeah. Anything we spend there just kind of goes away from the budget. That's my only concern, but.
And I think also, would any of these participants, is it required? Knowing that our budget is so small, do we need to include a stipend, or might they be willing to do without?
They would be willing to do it. They all said they want to be part of this. They would do it without it.
Let's do it without
So,
it.
that's just a nice to have,
I
I guess.
agree with that. Let's advance that idea first and see what they say.
Everyone I've talked to said, we want to know more, keep us involved. We'd love to do a bridge in Edina, so.
The guys in Amsterdam didn't say one thing about, well,
No.
we're gonna be in a design competition, we wanted little stipends.
I
It'd be
think
kind of-
sometimes, like, if it's so small anyway, like, it's almost like laughable, right? Like, oh, here's the $1,000, and then like, it's not worth it, right?
So yeah, I think overall, schedule-wise, there's no way we're building this in 25, just because this is gonna take months to get through this process. So then we're kind of shooting for 26, so MnDOT's gonna have to change the year they're funding, and they'll have to do that. And then our other half of the money is still good till 27, so.
Can you see if you can Google up a Verendeel art system? Remember how to spell it?
Spell test.
I got Verendeel.
If there was a way to say, we're looking for a bridge design, here is the budget that we are capping it at, and toss it out there so it could be an opportunity that goes beyond the people who we've contacted, I think that would be really kind of nice, just because, for a young architect, this could be an interesting opportunity to get their name out there. And you think about, okay, like Maya Lin and the Vietnam War Memorial and how she was a student at Yale. And I mean, not saying that that's going to happen, but giving opportunities and opening up.
Yeah.
When I looked this up the other day, Mayor, really had these vertical, get rid of all the angled steel. I didn't find one that was open that I could find a good picture of. But
Okay.
it's basically get rid of any angled truss supports. Like you can see here, it's all up and down, whatever that looks like. But then that guy from Calgary also talked about, opened it up too, yeah.
What is the Lowry Avenue Bridge? Is that, because that's a cool bridge. But that's not just for pedestrians, but that's got a really neat design, and it lights up different colors at night.
Is that the old one that used to be like see-through?
From Broadway to,
Yeah, it's super cool.
It was just like, it was like a grate.
But, yeah,
Like
and at
20
night,
years
it
ago.
looks amazing.
Aging myself here.
and we can do some,
Yourself.
we can do some cool things with lighting on
Oh, yeah.
bridges for sure.
Yep. Well, then I think we'll move forward with that kind of sketch plan, or request for information, or however I want to phrase it, but to these 4 people and see what kind of response we get.
That'd be great. I actually really liked, Member Risser's point of, if we weren't gonna include the stipend, could we open it up more broadly? I think it's worth considering,
Yeah.
because we might get some really cool partners out
I
of
mean,
that.
Armajani went to McAllister. Who knows, there might be another bridge designer there.
Concerns about that?
I like the idea, but I also think that some young architect who's never designed a pedestrian bridge, we're gonna get some kind of cool designs, but they don't have any idea what it costs.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's the cost of the engineering.
Sort of
Yeah.
thinking that we should stick with people that have done this before.
Because we might get 100 submissions, and then you gotta try to score and rate, and that'd be my concern is.
You really
Is
think
there a
we would?
middle ground?
Yeah.
Like-
I do.
Or you could do it in stages, you could see what we get out of the 4 of them.
Yeah, if you don't like it, we can
And we don't
open it
like
up more
what we see,
after.
we don't like what we see, we open it up
Yep,
more. Yeah.
yep.
Well, okay, I just have to ask. Are we reaching out to a demographically diverse group of bridge builders, or are they all?
We're not building any, these are strictly architects.
Okay. right?
I think that's a good question. Are any architects of color?
Or women.
Well, when we met with these firms, they had 30 people in their architectural
Okay.
groups.
Julie Snow.
Julie Snow,
Okay,
Snow
good.
really.
yeah. Trace has others. SOM showed me the org chart, and I could see all colors, races, genders in that thing. And Benton's a structural engineer. He wouldn't do this architectural piece. He says, there's somebody that grew up in Woodbury that would be interested, but they're out of their New York office. He said he would send it to that person. He would not be
He
doing.
grew up, I think, like in Crookston or somewhere.
Yeah, but he's a structural. He wouldn't, he
Yeah.
would just find an architect there that worked on the architectural piece.
Sent a blank email down there to them, and here this guy calls back, Benton Johnson, he
Yeah.
says, oh, he said, I grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah, and I'll be
I
back.
went to the U of
great.
M, I got my structural engineering degree at the U of M.
That's
And I'm
great.
coming back to lecture in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's
That's how
awesome.
Chad
Yeah,
ended
we
up
went down and
over
listened to him.
Okay.
And
That's
there. Like
awesome.
Max
professors also,
lecturing
so it was
on,
great. Professor French, that she was there yet.
Max lecturing on pedestrian bridges.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Well, this is super helpful. This is what we needed.
Okay, good.
Just some direction, and wanted to give a follow-up on the conversations we've had.
Yeah.
Really interesting thus far.
If you want to send that PowerPoint around to everybody.
Sure, yep.
And that's all we got for tonight.
Awesome.
So it didn't take us too long to get disinterested in the Peace Bridge after you thought that we found out it was a $70 million deal.
Just real quickly, I have been looking at the League of Minnesota Cities for what they recommend for doing city manager reviews. And Scott,
We can't talk about this.
oh, we can't?
We are very limited to our
Agenda.
Okay, so when are we gonna get it on the agenda?
Well, we can talk about it in the mayor's
Okay.
member comments at the end of the
Okay.
meeting today.
We have a potential night, though, of June 4th, where we had something that was on the work session agenda that's now pushed off. So we're holding that date with that.
Okay. I can talk about it. I feel like I have so many things I need to say at the end of the meeting.
It might be good if we make that then like the administrative, because we had all those other topics, minutes and announcements to community members. Like there were a couple of different like random topics we've been collecting. But the parking lot?
The
We'll
bike
talk about
rack, as
parking.
the EEC calls it.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder even if you could throw in, tree ordinance, is that too early? Or
We're doing that
in May.
separately.
Next
We're doing that in May.
And then what about Kevin Keys? Are we getting more interesting? I mean, I'm thinking of Kate's idea of just from a random number of things to talk about.
I think it'd be good to bring up Kevin Keys, because people keep,
It's for
can we talk
sale.
about that right now? Oh,
No, I just
okay, we
talked-
can't do it now, but I mean,
Yeah.
if we're just talking about topics are okay to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've had
Thanks,
3
Chad.
calls in the
That's
last 2
great.
weeks on Kevin Keys. What do you think about? Calls?
Alright, should we adjourn?
That's a good point.
Should we adjourn?
Yes, let's adjourn. Stand adjourned.